All right, I think I'm going here. Oh, let's unmute. All right, pretty sure. Get rid of that. You'll have to bear with me this morning. I've been running around with doing school kids stuff, trying to get my baby down for a nap, which just barely happened. So I think we're good to go. Make sure audio is good. Okay, cool. All right, so we are working on head drawing this week, particularly our self portrait. So I've pulled up a self portrait of myself. You have the prompt in yours to base it on an existing. Sorry, I got to edit some preferences here. There we go. So you're supposed to be drawing from existing artists' sort of way of putting things together on the page, or maybe some stylistic decisions. Remember, are we good here? Yeah. Okay. I'm such a streaming noob. Remember that yours is supposed to be a drawing, though. Don't go full color unless you feel really compelled to do so. It's not something we have discussed in the beginning figure drawing class. So it can end up muddying the waters more than anything. So the idea is that you're still doing a charcoal, or like a monochromatic drawing. You're just lifting some inspiration from an existing image, whatever that might be. All right, I don't have that for mine. I'm just going to talk about putting the head together. And maybe, let me see, I think I've got a different. So this reference of me is, it's kind of from straight on, but my eyes are going one way, my body is going the other, so there's a little bit of zigzag happening in the image. I think I'm going to look. That's no good. Yeah, I'm going to stick with this one. All right, so I'm just going to break down a little bit of what I'm seeing before I get started. And it's like I notice my body facing the one way, as I said. My neck is sort of slanting backwards into the body. Then my head is almost straight up. Maybe it's got a little bit of tilt to it. Is more or less straight on, though I think I see a little bit more of the right side than the left. I'm really going to be interested in that shadow edge and making sure. So this is in sunlight, so my eyeballs were killing me as I took this photo. But it's giving me some pockets of shadow that I can address, and that's going to help me draw the three-dimensional forms way more convincingly. So if you're taking your reference image of yourself in flat light, in the shade, in whatever, like your just room lights, the chances of you getting good, clear, distinct shadows the way that I have on this photo, it's a lot harder. You probably won't get them, and your drawing's going to be tougher to do as a result. Badly lit reference photos makes you have to work more at sort of inventing the forms, or just, inherently understanding the forms that you're drawing. Whereas getting a good single light source like this, it just kind of gives you the forms that you're drawing. So the process I'm going to follow today is going to be the same thing that we've sort of been doing. So I'm going to start with Vine Charcoal, with gesture and building things up and to where I feel like everything's good on the page. Then I'm going to move to a medium charcoal pencil to sort of get my straight line block in, contour situation figured out. I'll add some line variety and maybe some better line interest with this soft charcoal pencil. And I'll use that, potentially some other medium charcoal and some fine charcoal to kind of get the values going. And then in the light side, I'm on my gray paper here. In the light side, I'm going to let the white stick do the work. And as I look at this, I see some really shiny spots like up on my head, like all along what I'm looking at, the right side of that image, along the side of the right side of my nose, the right side of my lip, the right side of my chin, my ear on the right side. There's like a hits of light that pass all the way down through there. So I'm going to pay attention to that. That's where I'm going to do the bulk of the work with this white pencil. And then I'm going to let the rest of the light side be like vine charcoal and gray paper. And then in the shadows, I'll go even darker. All right, that's my general plan. I kind of like the off-centered situation that's going on. So I've got roughly my head there, shoulder, back. So that's going to be my general placement. All right, you can see with gesture how quickly that comes together. I'm going to put a center line down the head right now. So I don't want, if I look at the side of the image here, I can see that my head is tilted slightly. And I know my tendency in drawing, mine personally and the tendency for most people, is to crank that head so that it's perfectly straight up and down. I kind of like the lean of the neck. So I might even exaggerate that because it's going to feel better to exaggerate that lean a little bit, I think. And I'm going to make sure the head is leaning as well, which means my eyes need to be sort of like 90 degrees to that. So this isn't exactly where things are placed. This is just a plus sign to remind me to keep that head tilted so that it feels better. I'm just trying to capture some like general flows right now. Like I notice if instead of going up into my neck and to the side of my face here, if I just carry on with my shoulder, it's like if I round up this one and ignore the neck when it starts, it kind of slumps down the other side of this one, right? And I'm making my neck a lot skinnier here than it is in the image. If that happens, I'm not going to be too distressed. If your design is good, exaggerations of proportion can still work. But if your design's not working and things are stretched out and janky and it looks like a mistake, then it's going to be more of a problem. All right, so I'm going to start brain. I like to think of like the head as I'm just sort of structuring this out, particularly my head. It's like a brain holder in one spot. And then it's that mask. It's like a mask or something. So I have like a circle to hold the brain and an oval to sort of hold the mask of that head in. And I can make some choices right now. I can sort of make some measurements and be like, so I'm saying that like this is the side of that's like how wide my head is. And that's roughly where the top is. And I don't want to go any higher than that because I don't want to run into the top of my page. So does this width versus that height jive with what I see up there? And I'm going to get a better measuring implement for this. Forget it, I'm gonna have to jack my camera up if I do that. So I'm just gonna use my pencil instead. All right, if I take this measurement, width of head is chin, it's like 1.5. So if I take this, and I'm gonna have to scoot back. Can I get this long enough? Nope. All right, so in the drawing, one drawing is 1. Dang, that's close. I can also lie to myself here and tell myself it's close when it's not. And I've got that 1 goes right about between the eyes, and then it's another half. 1 goes above the eyes, and it's another half. 1 goes above the eyes. maybe just a little long in the face. Switching back to vine charcoal. And then the eyes are sort of down a little bit, but I'm keeping this tilt. I feel decent. So sides of the head here, right there, chin here, top of head there, feels pretty good. I can also sort of compare my chin to my shoulders, which I'm going to do right now as well. So it's like chin. If I just go off the slant of the chin, the shoulders are slightly up. It's like an up jog. So if this arc of the shoulders should happen just a little bit higher. And the chin's down here. That's a good one to get sort of shoulders to chin, like where's the chin relative to the shoulders? Because you can end up making the head neck way too tall because you're like, oh, the whole head is above the shoulders. But your view, like when I do this, if you look down here, when I do this, my chin is below both of my shoulders in this view. You know, that can change a lot. So that's a good sort of metric to get. Is like, where is the chin relative to the shoulders? If I go through the shoulders, does it pass through the eyeballs? Like here, my shoulders are going right through my eyes. There, that's going through my mouth. There, it's like the chin, right? So paying attention to that is going to be helpful. All right, and then I'm starting generic, and then I'll get more specific as I go. I don't want to start putting in final lines right now. That's a disaster. I know I'm going to have an ear like this and an ear like that. My advice with ears is really like break them down. Like this ear, to me, as I look at it, it's just like that shape, more or less. It's almost nothing. And with just a little bit of overlapping and a little bit of attention, the ear can be really convincing without trying to, draw the whole, curve of the ear, then the hole in the ear and all of that. Just a little bit of structure here. There, I'm going to put that neck down, and I'm kind of exaggerating the path that neck is taking into the body, right? I like this slant. It's like the head is curving up out of the body, and that's nice. Having just like a chunk, 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 perfectly straight situation, very awkward, very stiff, very boring. If I can pick up on the fact that this sternocleidomastoideus on this side is slanting in with a little hook at the bottom. So it's like slanting in, a little hook at the bottom. That's going to feel neck-like. And I think if I run a vertical straight through the eye, I think it comes in just a little bit further out like that. Ears happen, again, straight across from each other, but on this slant. Right, I want to keep that slant up. Even if what I'm looking at the image right now, I'm exaggerating the slant just a little bit. I'm going to try and keep it consistent in the drawing so that stuff lines up appropriately. So ear here, which is kind of hiding behind the cheek, but I do get the bottom of it there. Top of ear. And there are little weirdnesses person to person, right? Like I might have a little asymmetrical, like one ear taller than the other. I know that that's the case with my face, is one ear is slightly taller than the other, or there's all these little asymmetries that happen. So you can get away, a little bit of that's not going to be a huge issue. If it gets bonkers, that's when it's going to be a problem. Got a little jaw sticking out here and in. One thing that I like to do as I'm drawing, I'm kind of straight line blocking in here as well a little bit. I just keep an eye out for stuff that feels awkward or is not working. Right now, I feel like I've made the neck just a little thin and the jaws a little thin. So if I carry on with this, I'm going to look drawn out and stretched out. If that's happening in your drawing and it's in a way that's distracting, then fixing it is a good idea. But if it happens a little bit in the drawing as well, it's not really the end of the world. It's what else you do related to the form and the structure and the anatomy and the light and shadow and that kind of stuff can go a long ways. And I can point you towards a number of artists who they always stretch people out. They always do these bonkers proportions, but there's such good design and such decisive intent behind it that you just accept it and you don't bother with the fact that it's like, oh, that should be just a little bit. The rest of it's too good. The rest of it's too well developed to get distracted by the proportions being stretched because it's obvious that they were intentionally either allowed it to happen or did it on purpose. And a lot of times it's stylistic choices that amount to doing it on purpose. Anyway, right now would be the time for me to go, you know what? I need to broaden things up just a little bit. And you can see that's not much, but it will actually broaden things up. And just a little bit more neck. I'll still keep this, but the more this way I go with those measurements, the more stocky I'm going to start getting. And that's something worth remembering if you want a person to feel really stocky or bulky. Like, just as a preview, I'm going to leave the head the same, but with the neck, I'm going to come out just a little bit wider here and a little bit wider there. All right, see how that starts feeling? I start feeling a lot chunkier. The head doesn't have there's not a lot of muscles, maybe a bit in the jaw and the side of the head, but largely heads tend to stay similar, but then neck and down starts to bulk up more and more. So I kind of like where this was before, here and there. And those initial lines that I did you won't see those in the end of this thing. All right, I'm going to try and construct the features here. So I've been mapping them as I go. I want to measure where the nose is. 1, 2, a little less than 3. Let me do that again. 1, 2, almost 3 dead on. So the bottom of the nose is like at a spot where I could go 1, 2, 3. That's about right where it's at. And it's lined up with the bottom of the ears like I had, so I'm getting data points that are helping. But Steven's asking, my main goal is to be able to draw portraits from life rather quickly. What's the best way to practice establishing proper proportions early on in the drawing? I would say holding yourself accountable to these things over a series of a lot of drawings will make them, like anything else, it'll make it kind of sink into your operating procedure and the way you see the model to where you can really develop those proportions very quickly and develop the drawing very quickly. I would also say, for me, a change of mediums. So the medium I'm using, charcoal pencil on gray, can be a slow buildup medium. If you use sticks, you can get proportions and structure and map out and value and stuff all happening at the same time to where you can get a fully rendered almost portrait within 20 minutes or 30 minutes, which is really, really fast. So I would say, I would submit that it's a function of practice, but it's almost, I kind of equate it, it's almost like playing a musical instrument or something, right? How do you get really quick at something? Well, musicians will tell you you practice slowly at a speed you can handle, and then you build up the speed once you've developed that muscle memory and you know you can do it. Then it's easy to speed up something you can already do. You just practice. It sort of gets itself smoother. It's really hard to just go super fast and polish that super fast I hope that makes sense. I feel the same way about drawing, I guess, as I should bring it back to this. It's easy to speed up what you can do. It's hard to go super fast and maybe leave behind stages of the drawing that you could have fixed something in your rush and then not be able to go back and fix them. It's much easier to speed up a good process. All right, let's see. If I run a line through the eyes, it's like from ear joint to ear joint. That's like where this piece of skin comes in, that piece of skin comes in. That's like the eyes happen right across this. I'm still trying to keep this slant going because I don't want... I'll tell you what I don't want to do. I don't want to play the game where I draw an eyeball and then I spend the next hour trying to figure out where this one should go, right? Instead, I'm going to try and map this out more holistically. I feel good about the bottom of this nose. If I go chin, it's to between the brow. It's like right there. So here to there. I feel good about that eyeball line. I'm just going to have a stand-in from the sort of corner of my eye here. I'm turning this whole nose section into just a sort of a trapezoid shape. And I'm seeing just a little bit of the bottom of that. There's all kinds of construction that you can do here. I'm just kind of getting a few planes. I have like the top of the nose now and the sides of the nose and a little bit of the bottom. That's gonna help me draw things out better. It doesn't need to be anything super fancy. I'm just kind of like dissecting where things are facing, that kind of stuff. I can add finesse to this as I go. All right, where's my mouth? It's tempting to put it halfway between the nose and the chin, but that's not really the case. If I go to the line for my mouth, 1, 2, 3, it's like a third down. So like there maybe. 1, 2, 3, not quite, that's a little high. 1, 2, 3. That's pretty good. And it's kind of like in keeping with these lines run out to the edge of my mouth. Right, I'm going to do just some basic place holding here just to make sure. Generally, you've got 5 eyes in your head. It's like in the width of your head. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And because I'm turned slightly, there's a little bit less on this side and a little bit more on that side. That's gonna get me relatively close. And again, I'm not drawing these in very strong. That's just kind of a placeholder as I get the rest of this figured out. My chin, I like to add sort of the chin, and there's endless schematics that you can find about like mapping out an entire face. If you take intermediate, if you're in my class and you take the next level, we talk about some of the ways of breaking a head down in that way. One main thing I'm looking for right now, though, I have like the side of my cheek here. This line, this little zigzag represents like the side of my head. And out here I have a front of my head, which means somewhere between side and front, there's an angle, or maybe a couple of angles, but it goes from front of face to side of face at some point. And where is that? I'm going to look on the other side where the shadow is to tell me that, because that's a strong indicator. And I'm just going to put this down real basically as well. And I call this like the Iron Man mask. Right? It's like, it's not the side of the head here. It's like the front corner tucks in. There's a big pocket of shadow, which I will address later. There's a shadow here. It cuts in like this, then down like that, and in. Which means over here on the other side, there's going to be a similar situation, but because it's all in the light, we don't see it quite so well, though we do see a little bit of light on this cheek. Throw a shadow shape down here, and I think I'm just about ready to start. I'm going to do one final check on some proportions just to make sure things are sensible before I kick into the actual contouring. And again, this is where if you want it to look dead on like the person, then you need to spend a lot of time here making sure things are in exactly the right spots and so on. The shapes of things need to be correct. Everything needs to be really well considered. If you're going for just a head drawing and you're drawing reference from the image that you're using or the person that you're drawing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a portrait of that person or like be a dead-on ringer of that person, then you've got some leeway to just structure the drawing out instead of endlessly finding those little things that make them them. Like if I were to ask myself what makes me look like me, I have to find some things like the width of my nose and the way that it's angled, the hood of my eyes. So you can see, you can't see very much of my upper eyelid. So that's part of me. I got like strong brow on the top, not a lot, if any, upper eyelid showing, that kind of stuff. All right, I think I'm going to do just a little bit more in the nose. We've got that. When you're drawing noses, I would highly recommend that you do not draw two holes in the face. Unless you're going for something really stylistic and you don't mind the weirdness that's going to create. Holes in the face, like two black holes, is just, it just sucks our attention to it, and it feels, even if you get them correct, it still feels incorrect. It's weird. So beware of that. All right, I see this side. I'm just sort of giving myself hints to where my contours could go right now. You can see a little bit of the bottom of that. All right, and then this eyeball is all in shadow, and I can see it pretty well, but I'm gonna let it be in shadow, and this one is kind of in shadow as well. So rather than go in and draw the eyeballs and the whites of the eyes and everything, I'm gonna pay more attention, and this is nice because it's less work and it's more believable. I'm gonna pay attention to the light and shadow rather than the football shape of my eyes and the pupils. I might hint in the lights and darks that I use that I'm looking that direction, but my head is going to be mainly a matter of light and shadow and less eyeballs and nose and so on. There's some really subtle curving in the lips. I kind of like to make these pockets out to the side first, like sort of the deep pockets of the edge of your mouth. For some reason, it rather than try to draw a whole line, I kind of like make those little pockets. And you can see it starting to feel like lips already, even though it's just kind of a fuzzy straight line and some deep pockets. And then I'll do like the middle, so there's like a little bit of an angle down in the middle. There's a shadow shape that's really strong to light right there and curves down and back. And now I'm dealing with the shadow edge, right? It comes down off of this nostril. It drops right there and then goes straight. And then under this, there, cuts back in. This is where you get to see me talk to myself. Shape of the light here and down. So there's like this hook shape of shadow. Cuts back up. All right, so that's, you can see I didn't draw a football shape with like, pinched sides and a line between them or anything. This is a couple of pockets, a couple lines in the center, and that shadow edge, and it's starting to feel like lips. You add value to that, it's going to start to feel a lot like lips. And I have a thing where if it's in shadow, I'm going to ignore it for a little bit. So like this edge of the mouth, it's not going to get attention from me quite yet. I may get to that point, but it's not going to be high on the priority list. Incidentally, I could carry this portrait on entirely in vine charcoal the rest of the way, and it's kind of nice. You have to be careful because it gets messy. But it's quite possible to do a whole drawing just in the vine charcoal. And the nice thing about it is that you can see, that's a little too, that needs to be out further. You can see how quickly I can just go dust and redress the line. So this is why you find vine charcoal and sort of compressed charcoal such a popular medium, because you're not quite locked in. You can get super smooth transitions, and you're not quite locked in the way you might be with compressed charcoal. I notice my cheekbones flare out right at the ear, and then almost like at the bottom of this ear is where my cheekbone comes back in. Try not to over flatter myself with the rugged jaw, but you know, sometimes you can't help it. I'm still keeping this tilt in mind. I'm trying to stay on my game with that tilt. This is a hard decision to make. It's like, what is the shadow shape here doing? Something like that. How are we doing there? Yeah, that's not bad. This process right now is easier because I took the time, you know, such as it was, to sort of space things appropriately. Now I can kind of can freeform this shadow shape, just kind of wing it, so to speak, and have it be closer to correct because the stuff around it is correct. And so you're less likely to go crazy with it. I can measure it if I want. Maybe I'll do that just to sort of check its comparison. So the width of that whole shadow shape is same as the height of the nose to the center there. So it's like this. And so it's a little narrow for me. So now I can ask myself, do I need to stretch it? Is it being distracting? I think I didn't bring it in quite far enough here. And it lines up with the neck. Maybe stretch it just a little bit there. All right, I'm going to throw some value on this in vine charcoal, and then I'll move on to something a little more permanent. I can be a little less careful with the vine charcoal, and maybe that's not the best thing, but I can be a little less careful with it because I know that it's just going to move around on me. And I know what I'm planning is to come back with the charcoal pencil and make more definite statements about stuff. So for this stage in the drawing, it doesn't bug me to have the sort of roughness to the value application. This reference photo, I look a little bit disgusted. I wonder if I should try and lean into that. Okay, if I carry on much farther than this with vine charcoal, I'm going to kind of be stuck using vine charcoal. So I'm going to switch gears now and make some charcoal pencil decisions. This looks like I'm losing something, right? Like, oh no, he's undoing all of that work. This is me. This is something I do in my drawings. You don't have to do it in yours, but to me, it's just like setting the drawing. And if I use my hand, which if it's at all sweaty, can kind of lock things in place. I'm not too worried about that though, because I'm going to be using the white charcoal pencil. If you're worried about dirty hand or anything, you can just use paper towel. It'll do the same thing. All right, so now I can come back through with my charcoal pencil and make some more specific statements. And I can still change things if I need to. Once I come through with this pass, changing things is going to be a little harder, but on this pass, I'm going to try and be sensitive to overlaps and stuff more so than I was just barely. I've got this pointiness on the top of my head too. That's going to be important for me to have it be feeling like me. So I'm definitely going to get that knob. I don't love it, but it's who I am, so that's fine. I also have this scar down the center of my head there that I'm going to get. I'm doing kind of I don't want to say truncated, I'm doing a quick version of this drawing, so I'm going to let slide. If it doesn't look exactly like me, I'm not going to stress too much about it. What I'm after here is a good structured head drawing. So that's what I'm going to focus my energies on. I'm going to be light-handed right here in these shadow shapes because some of them need to be a hard edge and some of them need to be a soft edge. And it's kind of important that I'm consistent as to which is which, right? That difference between hard edge and soft edge is going to be the thing that really sells the three-dimensional form. If I do hard edges everywhere, there's going to be a lot of nuance about what kind of forms they are that gets lost. If I do soft edges everywhere, it's just going to look like a mushy mess. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I will mention it again here. Like, where is a good place to put strong contour lines? And I would say try to envision, like, slow down and look at what you're looking at, right? I don't know how you can not look at what you're looking at, but and ask yourself, is this part of the drawing a form that is facing perfectly perpendicular to my line of sight? Right? Like the top of the head here, the reason it's so clear is because that head is rounding up, and at a certain point it flattens, and we see that flat edge as like as a delineator, right? It goes flat on us. Anytime you have a plane that goes flat, a contour line is a good choice. So right here on the nose, there's that side of my nose tucks in And so contour line, the bottom of my nose, all of those parts of the skin at the bottom of my nose are facing down, perpendicular to my line of sight. And so a contour line on those is appropriate. That's not a hard and fast rule. I mean, you can certainly do a good drawing without perfectly obeying that rule, but it's a good place to start if you're like, I never know where to put contour lines. Like, how do I know what's an important place for them? Well, that'll get you started. And it only makes sense, right? Because the reason a ball in our mind is a circle is because no matter how you change a ball, you always see that circle. And it's because every edge is the same. Every perpendicular edge to your line of sight is going to make the silhouette of that ball a circle. The silhouette of this nose is going to have, these side, especially the wings of the nose here, the sides are facing perpendicular to your line of sight. Contour lines make sense. If you went through the materials on canvas, if you went through the materials, you'll see, you better have gone through the materials, by the way, if you're in my class. You'll see what I talked about in those materials, like where it's like having like a nose with two holes and a football-shaped mouth and football-shaped eyes with circles in the middle and stuff. You can make it look like a face that way, you can, but it's not, that might not be the best way to go about it, the most believable way to go about it, the best representation of what we actually see when we're looking at the person versus, what we're, I guess, paying attention to. And what I mean by that is what we pay attention to when we're looking at someone is their face. We're looking for what, evolutionarily speaking, I guess, we're looking for signs of aggression. We're cued to try and like pick up on what the other person is thinking / feeling. We're social creatures for the most part. So it's important for us to be able to pick up on nuances of expression and all that. And the price we pay is that we think we're looking at one thing or seeing one thing, and we're in fact not. Don't get me talking while I draw, because then I start spouting. All right, this neck shadow is interesting. I kind of like it. It cuts down and swoops in, and then it has a little hook. Swoops down again and has a little bump up and goes down onto this shirt. And this shirt kind of has an S-curve feel to me as it comes off the shoulder and swoops down. So I'm just going to design that into the drawing. Little offset here. It's important, that little offset right there, I don't know if you can see it, right where that shadow comes and then offsets to that shirt. Little things like that are going to give a lot of dimension, more than you might expect. The shadow's a little bit thinner. I love ears in this view because they have such interesting contours. Like I've got a contour right there. Comes down into some shadow. There's the silhouette edge. Cuts in and hooks down. And into my zero, my attached lobe. Am I freezing? I don't know my internet is spotty right now. It's going from really good to really not great. Well, hopefully you're getting a good viewing experience. There's a contour that comes down, almost goes to the edge there, then back. That's about it for that ear. I'm not going to draw a bunch of attention to it. All right, I'm going to fill in these shadows a little bit more carefully now with an eye on hard edge, soft edge. Right, and my protocol I'm going to be running is the bottom edges of the shadow shapes are more likely to be hard edges because they're going to be shadows being cast, and the tops of the shadow shapes, so here, here, like there, here, not so much there, here, are going to be soft edges because they're forms turning into the shadow. So it's like, well, let's just get to it. I've got a little bit. There's some interesting shadow happening up here that I've just kind of simplified to this one big shape. I think I'm going to get the difference though and cut this shadow shape up to this shape. In that shape, because it's kind of interesting little, I don't know, ridge contour. Again, I'm still just with the charcoal pencil here. Soft edge here. You'll notice I'm ignoring the eyebrows, and I'm going to, at least for a little bit. I want these shadow shapes to make sense first. So the upper side of that is a soft edge. The bottom, however, has some nice hard edge stuff, especially like right here next to the nose. Hard edge. Hard edge, and I can even ease the top edge of that. So you can start to, it starts feeling like shadow really effectively there. And right here, it's a hard edge. And then it's a soft edge all the way down through here. And I'm going to use my finger to sort of ease that edge. Now I don't see a whole lot of core shadow in the image because I'm outside and the ambient light is just filling the shadow very similar everywhere, but I'm still going to put a sense of it right here. Because it just adds a three-dimensional feel to things. And I can choose at this point what I want to focus on and what I want to downplay. So I don't have to render every single part of this portrait exactly the same. In fact, it can be more effective to pick where you want the focus to be and literally focus on that. You don't want anything to really look like terribly unfinished, but you don't necessarily have to bring everything up to the exact same level of polish. At least not to my mind. You'll notice I haven't done any of the facial hair yet or anything either. That's stuff I can elect to do that at a different time later. Little hook of shadow off the shirt here is nice to get. Just add a little depth. Shadow there. All right, so my goal here was to, up to this point, was to show not a single eyeball to be seen. Does it look like a convincing portrait? Yeah, it is missing eyes. You're like, it'd be nice to be able to see what the eyes are actually doing. I still have the option to come in and add, I'm just going to do some dark shapes here to sort of hint at where I might go with the eyes. So there's one getting started. It should be a little higher. Because I've done all of this other foundation work, this stuff is much easier to get. I'm not relying on these shapes as my only indication of eyes, right? I've got everything else there. And so it's going to be easier to put that stuff in. The question I can ask myself is, to what extent do I want it to be, to what extent do I want to hint at those eyes, and to what extent do I want to draw them in entirely? Right? And I think I'm a little more comfortable. I'm going to do this again because that's my MO. I'm a little more comfortable just hinting at them at this point. So even though I see them strong in the image, because there's so much light in the shadows, I don't have to make them as prominent as in the image. To bring this nose out just a little bit more. This is my soft charcoal pencil. Then I'm going to play up this cast shadow at the nose. So rather than draw attention to the eyes in this drawing, I think what I'm going to do is draw attention to the light and shadow difference. That chin is rounding into shadow, so it's a soft edge. So I'm going to, because I have that bed of vine charcoal down, and I'm going really light with this charcoal, I can use my finger to sort of give that a soft edge, or I could take the time to just lay it in nice and soft the whole way. Because I'm kind of a mess, I make the mess and then wrangle it. I'm okay just, giving a little smear with the fingers. Cast shadow there. The edge gets soft right here. Right through that center of that hook, the edge is kind of soft, and then it gets hard again through here. Then we have the shirt, and that's a black shirt. Like, you can see how deep this shadow is. I'll hint at that, but I'm not going to go full dark just yet. I'm going to wait and see what happens the rest of the drawing. I certainly don't want the shirt to steal the show. All right, I'm going to come through and do a little bit of eraser work. So I've got this fog down, but it's kind of like, this is just still my darks and my shadows and stuff. I'm going to come in with some eraser and see if I can't pick up some more detail on the shadow edge and sort of clear some way in the light side for the white charcoal to come down and do its work as well. And I could just kind of paint with this kneaded eraser because I smeared all of that charcoal around. It's really great ground for erasing back out of. That area is going to need some white charcoal, so I'm going to prime it by getting rid of, just erasing out more charcoal in that spot. There's little slivers of white hair here, my salt and pepper hair situation. I might pick some of that up with the white charcoal when I come through. I'm certainly not going to fixate on it right now with my eraser. Right there. There's a hard edge right there under that corner of the eye. That shadow makes a nice hard edge. Nothing funner than listening to someone erase. I would encourage you to take your time at this point. Really try to be intentional about what you're doing. Like for me right now, no eraser mark is being made without some reason, right? Without something telling me that that is an appropriate thing to do in my reference. Because otherwise you run the risk of it just, if it gets random, well, you run the risk of it looking random, right? It's not. If everything you do in your drawing, how do I want to say it? If everything you do in your drawing is intentional and has intent behind it, then your whole drawing will look intentional, right? Like the things that are happening are the things that you wanted to have happen. If you do a lot of random stuff that just doesn't have any thought behind it, then your drawing will look random without a lot of thought behind it. And it's less, a drawing is like a record of someone's decisions. You know, the whole decision-making process is on display. And if you don't have a process, it will show in the drawing. I'm trying to ignore the little shiny spots in favor of the light shadow edge, because I know I'm coming back with white charcoal. That should be a little lower. So like the temptation here in the nose is to just erase out the highlight only and carry on. And I can do that. If I do that, I'm going to look like I've got a red nose, right? Which, I don't know, maybe that's what I want. Like, here, I'll start that. Little lift there. Just catching these highlights. This is before I do the white charcoal. Clean the rest of this up just so we have a kind of frame of reference here. Right, that nose is going to look, I don't know, too red. But maybe you want it to be red, right? Sometimes you get like a cold weather picture, or you want someone to seem flushed, like jolly Santa or whatever. And making the ears red and the nose red, and to an extent the cheeks red, is a good way of doing that. Good way of making it feel more flushed. You know, or comical. You know, you can really exaggerate the redness of things and end up with something that's jolly or comical or whatever. Ear in. This ear has some shiny stuff on it, but I have to ask myself, is that where I want people to look? Like right now, it's kind of stealing attention because of the contrast there and how much contour line there is. So if I don't want that to steal the show, I can just knock it back, downplay some of the light information that's happening there and just stay away from it. Even though there's light stuff there, I can stay away from it with my white charcoal pencil so that it doesn't end up trying to take over. De-reddening that nose. All right, one thing I can do is there's kind of a mess around as well. I can clean that up just with this eraser. So if I want to provide a nice strong silhouette here, I can go lighten up this background. Just lift some of that charcoal smear off of it. And my tendency in my drawings is because I don't really care to draw attention to the top of the head, I'll probably just leave it like that. There's a photographer's trick that you could do as well, which is on the dark side of the image, so there's the shadow, I lightened up the background. On the light side of the image, I darken the background. And you end up with this sort of light, dark situation that can be kind of nice. Especially if you have something architectural or something in the background that could justify this. You don't really need to justify it that much, but it can be nice to have, like, you know, some indication that there's some reason that it's dark there. Add a little something on this side so it doesn't look too contrived, I guess. All right, that's going to give this light side something to play against. I'm just going to hint at that hair right now with this little swipe just in the silhouette. Maybe opposite on this side. Not going to go overboard. All right, I'm going to throw some white charcoal in here. And at this point, it's going to be push, pull, kind of give, take. I'm going to go out on a limb with this compressed charcoal stick, just to get some coverage. for the sake of the total image, I would finish this out. If I were doing a full drawing, I would sort of finish this out. Maybe there's like a question mark here, like why is the head so off-centered? And I didn't put the eyeballs in looking that way to sort of, there's hints there. I either need to flesh out compositionally, maybe there's something like indistinct thing back here, just kind of like bringing us back here. I should probably explain this empty spot and down here as well. That's how this would go, more towards seeming like a finished drawing. That's going to give me a nice sort of like maximum dark for the image. So I can come in and go, okay, I need my core shadows and I need some cast shadows to kind of compete with this so that that doesn't suck our attention as like the darkest thing. And it's going to give me permission to darken up some other stuff. What might it be? Maybe at this point I start thinking about this facial hair. Right, and you can see at this point how having the shadow structures in and stuff, how easy it is to get a sense for the facial hair. I'm just kind of like playing with the silhouette edge more for the most part, and then adding just a few little things that branch up from it. It doesn't take a whole lot. You don't want to overdo this, because you can overpower the values in your drawing by overdoing the, well, if you have facial hair, right? But I'd say head hair is the same story. Like you really want it to obey the value situation you have set up and not steal all the glory. You know, like if I squint down at this part of the shadow that has this mustache stuff in it, the mustache stuff kind of disappears. So to my mind, that should be happening in my drawing as well. It tells me that facial hair is not as important as my brain wants it to be. I can hint at it, I can add it, but less is going to be more. So maybe there's just a few light things happening out here to sort of indicate. And my facial hair is pretty sparse anyway, so I kind of get away with just little textural hits here and there. That comes together relatively quickly. All right, white charcoal. Where are we going? We're going to have some up here. And I've got something in my back pocket that I want to potentially use as well. It's not literally in my back pocket. I have a tool in my belt that I can use should it be required, and that is a white new pastel. It is going to be so much stronger than this charcoal that if I feel like the charcoal isn't cutting it, like I need a shiny spot that I just can't get with the charcoal pencil, then I can bring the new pastel in to just finish the job with that really strong highlight. So I'm doing kind of a slow build up here, and I know it blows out, like it's my maximum white is up here in this forehead, but I kind of don't want to draw. I don't want that to be the focus of the drawing. Is like, wow, look at that forehead. So I'm going to take it slow. I may yet, strengthen it, but I'm going to just kind of be gentle with it at first here. I do like this little wrinkle, so I'm going to add some sense of my old guy forehead wrinkles. And that's just some white lines that, crisscross. That's going to be enough to just, change the skin a little bit. I've got this, my head slanted line is still in there. So I'm going to come in and just disrupt that because I don't really need that anymore. And if it's still sort of there in some sense, like you could still kind of see that it's in there, it's not, as long as it's not taking over, it's going to be fine. For my marks here, I'm taking my cues from what I see in the image. It's like the texture of this light shape here is kind of fanning out like my fingers are doing here. So I'm kind of making the marks that do a similar thing. Gentle marks though, if I make them too strong, they're going to take over. I want them to be supporting, not taking over. A little bit on this side, and this is where I'm going to get my scar in. I have a scar on my forehead where I dove into a river when I was younger, and there was a rock under the water. So I would say don't dive into rivers without checking first, but I had been swimming at that same spot for several days and just didn't see it, didn't know it was there. So don't dive into rivers, I guess is my point. Full stop. All right, maybe it's time to add just a little bit of, just a couple of hits of hair texture over here. Again, I'm not drawing it. I don't want that to be the center of attention, so I'm going to leave it. I do want the nose to pop out, so I'm going to pay some attention there. And the nose popping out is going to be a function of just this highlight being appropriate. I'm kind of making my marks going this way so that they, here you can see them up close. So they kind of wrap on that nose. That's going to add to the sense of the form of that nose. I don't see a highlight down here on the nostril, so I'm going to be careful about overdoing the white charcoal down there. I like to draw attention to this little cast shadow under the nose. So I'm going to structure that out just a little bit. That part of the face is kind of a shelf like this, facing the light a little bit as well, so I can get away with adding white there. Some white there and there. And here. Bottom lips are kind of cool. They have these crease textures, so there's like these little light shapes that you can play with that kind of radiate downwards. You don't want to go overboard, but it can really start, those downward little hits can really start making it feel like a lip. I like to add a little oomph to the bottom pocket of the, just right there underneath the mouth. That gives just a little bit of, just a little bit more texture there. It's like the lip is wrapping up there, and so the light is kind of hitting that right as it wraps up and tucks in. All right, I'm going to have to wrap it up here in just a little bit. I got my daughter's upstairs calling for me. What? Yeah, if you can find something. I said go ahead if you can find something. Sorry, everyone. All right, so that's the center stripe here. I've got some on either side as well to do. So there's like a little bit of light pocket here. Oh my goodness. All right. Hitting interruption time of day. All right, I'm going to leave that ear alone because I want it to fall backwards. I'm just kind of doing the most important spots with the white charcoal. All right, I might go back. So at this point, I would be like, I'm going to go back into this, go back into the shadow shapes and get a little more specific with things. I just want, before we sign off, I think I'm going to call it here. We're not doing the beginning drawing class, so this figure drawing class is going longer, but I did want to show you, this is that piece of new pastel. If I come back in with the new pastel, it'll just, oh, you can't see it on the camera so well. All right, if you could see this in real life, you would see that that just made a super bright, super light in value hit on the drawing. Up here as well. My camera can't seem to pick that up. If you see this in real life, that is screaming white. It's extremely white. So if you have the white Nu Pastel, any spot that's really glossy, you can kind of play up here at the end to just add that little bit of extra oomph. Get a clean finger to integrate this a little more. All right, I think I'm going to call it there. Hopefully that gave you some hints, tips, help, or whatever as you're working on your portraits. The thing I just want to re-emphasize is while you may be drawing the eyes in their entirety, don't rely on the football-shaped eyeballs. If you remember from the pages that you looked at, don't rely on the shapes, of the features themselves above and beyond the shapes of the light and shadow. You can see how much more oomph, how much more bang for your buck you get with the light and shadow patterns than you do with like drawing. Like the lips, I never drew those lips as anything other than patches of light and shadow. And they read the way they read when you see them normal in real life, right? So please try to remember that. Please try to use what we've covered in class so far to build your drawing up. I know we haven't focused on the head specifically, but try and apply the process that we've gone over up till now in dealing with it. All right, that is going to do it. Hopefully the quality was okay for you. It's been coming and going, hit and miss here for me. So, all right, this is the last live stream this semester. Good luck with your portraits. Good luck with your final drawing. Next week is the last time you're turning anything in. So then you can breathe a sigh of sweet relief and then sign up for my intermediate figure drawing class in the fall. That class will be meeting both in person and online, sort of a combo hybrid is what it's looking like. So, all right, y'all, have a good one.